Hey there folks, Scottsdale Travel Chick Sidekick here to present our guide to the perfect walking tour of Paris. Paris is a huge city, so I'll start off by saying that unless you want to walk 10 to 20 miles, it will be impossible to see everything in one walk, but this video will cover many of the most famous sites and local diversions around the river. The walk covers about 6.5 miles or 10 kilometers walking straight through and will take about 2.5 hours. But of course you'll want to explore a lot along the way, so plan for a good full day of walking during this trip. The walk I'll cover will also allow for detours to nearby sites, but they aren't included in the baseline 6-mile route, so keep that in mind. Nonetheless, the main detour I will discuss later is a great option should you want to extend your walking tour by breaking it into 2 separate days. Okay, let's get right into it. Here's a map of the overall walk. As a general flow, you'll start at the Opera House in the upper right, walk down towards the Louvre, walk along some gardens in the riverfront towards the Eiffel Tower, then up to the Arc de Triomphe in the famous Champs-Élysées shopping street. To get started, take a taxi, take a train, or simply walk, bike, or scooter to the Opera House. This building was built for the Paris Opera and completed in 1875 at the behest of Emperor Napoleon III. Initially referred to as the New Paris Opera, it soon became known as the Palais Garnier in an acknowledgement of the extraordinary opulent design by the architect Charles Garnier.
Okay, so this is the front side of the opera, and all these people are hanging out, listening to this guy sing. They have this amazing view behind us. We're going to be walking down the street. This is Avenue des Opera, and we are headed down to see some more sights before we go to the National Gardens.
Take a few pictures and maybe explore some cafes nearby if you'd like. Then head down the wide Avenue des Opera in the direction of the river. We're going that way. As you walk along various boulevards like this, don't be afraid to explore the nooks and crannies of the shops and side streets along the way. We had some of our best experiences doing this. For example, here are just 2 along this street. Pierre Hermé Pastry Shop is just one of the tons of pastry and bed shops around Paris, but it's one of our favorites.
In this shop, they have all kinds of fancy desserts, like mini little cakes. Delicious.
Go take a look.
Really good. Yeah. So my favorites are these raspberry ones. These are 39 euros a piece.
A piece, ouch. And these are all the macaroons, yeah? Famous in Paris, so this is a good place if you want to get your macarons. Just a bit further down off this intersection is a cool side street area with a ton of outdoor cafes around a small loop. These type of somewhat hidden places are great as there are usually more Parisians than there are tourists, and you can get a real feel for the place.
Okay, so just past the macaroon place, turn down here and you see Chateau Voltaire. And there's a great little square down here to get a bite to eat, and we're going to show you that down here.
So here's the square, and it's a loop around this big glass building. And it's early right now, but you can see all the tables. We came here last night. We may include a bit of that video, but there's lots of outdoor patios. And here's the same place at night when we had dinner. And then walking about 100 meters down, you come to this interior square around this big glass building, and just a ton of cafes all over the place around this loop. As you reach the end of Opera Boulevard, you'll come to the Royal Palace and Gardens. It's not a huge tourist site, but it's certainly worth a stop. Built in the 1630s for Cardinal, I think, Richelieu, Then bequeathed to Louis VIII and Louis IX, today it serves as the seat of the Ministry of Culture, but the courtyard and gardens are open to the public and worth a stop. Here we come into the courtyard of the palace, and we're going to go down to the gardens over there. And then we enter the gardens in between this promenade. So this garden is kind of typical of French gardens. You've got this big row of trees that tends to go down the sides of the gardens, very shaded with benches. And then in the middle, like Versailles is something like this, but much bigger. And then you've got gardens. In this case, some beautiful rose gardens with grass in the middle and a fountain.
Here we are in the middle of the garden, and everyone is relaxing around this beautiful water fountain.
Again, this is the fountain at the center, but interesting to note all the people, right? So they're generally in little flats without a yard or without a garden, so many of them come to the parks like this just to relax when the weather's nice. Okay, once you're done with the Royal Palace and Gardens, the famous Louvre Museum is just around the corner. It's the world's most visited museum and one of the most famous sites in all of Paris. And it's home to many famous works of art, including the Mona Lisa. Most people don't realize it, but this place is huge, covering multiple humongous buildings and containing more than 380,000 objects and 35,000 works of art. It would take a person more than a week just to see everything for 30 seconds each. Hey, and this, my friends, is part of the Musée du Louvre, which goes all the way from there, all the way down there, and around in a big square with a courtyard in the middle. This is just one wing we're looking into. This is the building that was outside, and here's a big square, and there's 4 of these. Here we are inside the Louvre, which you can see is massive. Those 2 wings are just in here, this side and that side. Plus, you've got this whole other wing on the other side. And this is how you actually go in, is you go in this middle glass pyramid. And they check at the moment for COVID stuff.
Okay, so we are at the Louvre, and we are in the courtyard area. This is the entrance. And we are headed over to the Art Design.
And do you know the gardens? Jardin des Tuileries. At this point, our walk turns to the west to begin our journey through beautiful gardens, fountains, and the riverfront. But this is also a good point to stop and tell you a few of the famous sites you won't see on this walk. They are worth a visit on their own, so I want to mention them here and show you an alternate or additional route you can take. This additional route heads south from the Louvre and covers the Notre Dame Cathedral. I don't think I have to say too much about this, but do remember it caught fire a year or 2 ago and is currently closed for renovations. The Latin Quarter is on the south side of the river across from Notre Dame. This is a really cool place to explore at night and also a nice area to use as your base for your hotel. Perhaps it's a pro tip, but this is our favorite hanging out spot in all of Paris. The Pantheon is nearby and was completed in 1790, modeled after the Pantheon in Rome. It is today primarily a crypt for famous French people. Voltaire, Victor Hugo, and Madame Curie, among many others, are all buried here. Luxembourg Gardens is just south of the Latin Quarter and was created in 1612 by Marie de Medici, the widow of King Henry IX, for her new residence, aka palace, which she also constructed on the site. The gardens in the palace cover 57 acres and are known for their tree-lined promenades, flower beds, and picturesque Medici fountain built in 1620. The final stop on this alternate route are the Paris catacombs. It's a huge underground burial complex which houses the remains of over 6 million people. Every skull and bone in it were real live people at one time. The catacombs were created in the late 1700s to help alleviate the city's overflowing cemeteries. And today, they are a tourist site you can tour, and it's kind of weird, but really cool at the same time. The additional time and distance for this alternate route is about 1 hour of walking and another 3 miles, or about 5 kilometers, from the Louvre. If you have the stamina, it's possible to add this excursion into your overall tour with a taxi ride back to the river, but breaking this section out into a second day is probably best. That would make a 2-day walking tour of about 4 hours and 10 miles. But remember, that doesn't count the time or distance for exploring each of the sites. Okay, now back to our main route for the perfect walking tour of Paris. I left you at the Louvre, where you're now going to head west into the beautiful Tuileries Gardens. This is the start of what's called the Triumphal Way, which is a visual straight-line path of parks and roads running from the Louvre all the way up to the Arc de Triomphe. The gardens were the private gardens of Tuileries Palace, completed in 1564, but were only open to the public after the French Revolution. The gardens are a beautiful space to wander around with lots of fountains, flowers, trees, and shady spaces, and many people just relaxing and walking about. Just for fun, here's some more drone video flying along the river and through the park from east to west. You'll continue your walk through the Tuileries Gardens and then to Concorde Plaza. This is the largest square in the capital at 19 acres or about 7.5 hectares. The center of the plaza is occupied by a giant Egyptian obelisk, which once stood at the entrance of Luxor Temple in Egypt. Fun fact, this plaza also has a dark side too, as it was the site of many notable executions during the French Revolution, including the executions of King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. From Concorde Plaza, walk to the riverfront and continue west. Either side of the river can be walked, and you can either walk up at street level or down along the riverfront. We recommend walking down along the river, as there are a few summertime dining and drinking options here, as well as a couple of riverboat tour companies to check out. Invalides is next, and it's an interesting detour just off our main route if you'd like to take it. Les Invalides, or the House of the Disabled, is a complex of buildings containing museums, monuments, and other things, all related to the military history of France. The Royal Chapel, known as Domes des Invalides, as well as the Tomb of Napoleon, are also here. The Sewer Museum, or the Sewer Tour, as I like to call it, is also along this riverfront route. A sewer tour sounds a little weird, but we've actually done it and would highly recommend it, especially if you have kids. Just a quick shout out here that if you're enjoying this video, please give us a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to our channel to receive more informative travel videos just like this one. Now, finally, as you continue along the waterfront, you'll come to the most recognizable structure in the world, the Eiffel Tower. It was built in 1889 for the World's Fair and was initially criticized by many of France's leading artists for being ugly. but it has become a global icon of France and is one of the most visited monuments in the world, with more than 7 million visitors a year. Fun fact, the Eiffel Tower was the tallest man-made structure in the world for more than a half a century, until the Chrysler Building in New York City was finished in 1930. We have 2 pro tips for the Eiffel Tower. Number 1, you can certainly visit it in the day, but please be sure to visit it at night when it lights up at the top of each hour. We're at the Eiffel Tower, it's going off.
Goes off for 5 minutes on the hour.
And number 2, the best viewing for the Eiffel Tower is actually from across the river on the north side in the Trocadero area. Speaking of Trocadero, once you've had your fill of the Eiffel Tower, head across the river to the north side, where you'll come to Trocadero Gardens. The main feature here is the Fountain of Warsaw. It's a long basin of water originally created for another World's Fair in the 1930s. There's something like 22 different fountains that still spray on occasion for special events. There are a couple of small museums here too, as well as the Paris Aquarium. There's also a lot of sculptures here dating back to the 1930s, and as I mentioned, this is one of the best areas for viewing the Eiffel Tower. Okay, at this point in your walk, you will have covered more than 4.5 miles, plus all the walking around the monuments and sites. And it also doesn't cover the alternate route I described earlier. So, we have 2 more big sites left, but if you're tired of walking or just want to finish the tour for the day, this might be a great place to stop. Assuming you've still got the stamina left though, we're now headed north to the Arc de Triomphe. It's one of the most famous monuments in Paris, standing at the western end of Champs-Élysées, at the juncture of 12 incoming avenues. The monument was commissioned in 1806 and honors those who have died in the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, and beneath its vault lies the tomb of the unknown soldier from World War I. Finally, from Arc de Triomphe, turn back to the east and explore the famous Champs-Élysées. It's at the other end of the Triumphal Way I mentioned earlier, and it's a wide 1.2-mile boulevard running from the Arc de Triomphe in the west back to Concord Plaza in the east. The boulevard is known for its theaters, cafes, and luxury shops, as well as the finish to the Tour de France cycling race and the place of France's annual Bastille Day military parade. And it's commonly regarded as one of the most beautiful avenues in the world. If you've made it this far, you will have finished our walking tour and you will have had a very long day of walking and exploring, so maybe take some time for a coffee or a bite to eat in one of the many cafes along the Champs-Élysées, and then take a taxi back to your hotel to reflect on all the beautiful new memories you've made in Paris. Well, there you have it, our guide to the perfect walking tour of Paris. We hope you enjoyed. Please let us know what you think in the comments section below, and please follow us for more informative travel videos just like this one. Until next time, see you later.